forgot if I...
And you don't speak Hebrew.
I do not. I can say shalom, that's about
יש
it.
לנו אורחת הפעם נדירה. היא בפעם הראשונה באולפן שלנו, אבל עם זאת, אם אנחנו מסתכלים בה טוב, אז היא כל כך מוכרת. ולמה היא כל כך מוכרת? כי היא דומה מאוד לאבא שלה. ואבא שלה הוא הפסנתרן הדגול ארתור רובינשטיין. היא הדוקטור אלינה רובינשטיין, והיא רופאה, ואנחנו עוד נספר עליה ונדבר איתה. אבל בינתיים אנחנו רק רוצים להגיד לה, שלום אלינה.
Shalom, Arik.
We are delighted to have you. And my first question will be, those days, your father must be away for long periods, because, for instance, if you go for a concert tour in Latin America, that will take at least a month.
Especially in the old days, and it wasn't so fast. He traveled there a lot during the World War II when he couldn't go to Europe. It was a very long, sometimes for several months at a time.
Several months? Mm-hmm. To Australia or to Latin America?
To Mexico and then Brazil, Argentina, especially Argentina.
Yeah, you can't fly and buy a return ticket and
Not so
tomorrow
quickly.
you are at home. So, no father at home?
Father was not at home for a long time. As I got a little bit older, he came back at Christmas because Handel's Messiah was in all the concert halls, so there was no room for piano concerts.
See, so he could not concertize, so
yes.
he must...
The Messiah showed up, and that was...
But on the other hand, when he is at home, then he's full-time at home. He must not go to the office at 8 o'clock.
No, he slept, he read the newspaper, he read many, many books. He loved the movies. He was still not home so much because he liked to go out and enjoy himself.
I see. So he will not get up at 7 o'clock to have breakfast with his children?
No. No, he did not.
Even not once?
Only if he had to catch a plane.
I see. I see. So it was mommy, or you had a nanny? Or?
We had a nanny because my mother, she often went with him. Sometimes she stayed home, but often she went with him.
Tell me his regular timetable, schedule. So wake up at 11?
No, maybe 9:30, 10, but after our school, though.
I see.
And then the big cigar, the newspaper.
Before breakfast, big cigar?
No, after breakfast.
Okay.
Breakfast was not so much, and then mostly big cigar, much reading until lunch.
And
my father loved to eat, but he was good about it.
And the cigars were very good. Which
they were
ones?
Havana cigars. Once I brought them in my suitcase because, as you probably know, they were illegal, and they found them there.
And do you like to enter home and to feel the cigar?
Only Havana cigars.
Only Havana.
Monte Cristo number 3.
Okay.
That I like.
I think that he had his own a packing.
I think at one point, but later not so much.
I heard Yasha Bistritsky used to tell me that in Geneva, Mr. Davidov had his boxes, Rubinstein boxes.
Yes, I think so.
Amazing.
My mother wasn't so fond of the cigar, but my father always asked permission to smoke, and she always said yes. That was assumed.
Okay, then he smokes his cigar,
yes.
read newspaper.
And a book.
And a book. And that was in which city?
Mostly, I saw the most of him really in Paris. When I was 9 years old, we moved back to Paris. We had a home there before the war and the Nazis, and we had to leave. But they got the house back in 1954. We all moved back. And then I saw more of him.
But you were born?
I was born in Hollywood, California, because many European emigres went to California.
So you were born in Hollywood, in a house, not an apartment?
No, in a house. They had 2 different houses there, and then they bought an apartment in New York because it was easier to get to Europe, and then finally we got the house in Paris back.
And then you went to school in Paris?
I went to school in Paris for a year and a half, and then they decided that we should have an American education, so we came back and lived in the apartment in New York, and then we didn't see him so much. But in the summer, for 4 or 5 months, we were always together.
We would like to watch a clip when Rubinstein, your father, was slightly young, and the conductor, Zubin Mehta, even younger. He
Very
looks
young.
like
Very
a
young,
child.
yes.
Isn't it wonderful, Alina?
It's wonderful, and I had such a crush on Zubin in those
my
days.
God.
I was in love.
Oh, my God. You were not in the concert.
No, I don't think so, but I met him when he was very young, and I was a little younger, and he was so handsome.
Yeah, yeah. Tell me, you often went to concerts of your father's?
Whenever I was in the same place, I went, yes, always.
Yeah, do you remember some remarkable concerts or some memorable event?
Well, I remember that I think it was in 1961 that he played 10 concerts in something like 5 or 6 weeks in New York, all for charities. Even one was for my school and my brother John's school. And he didn't repeat any repertory except a few in the encores, but that was pretty amazing, I must say.
Yeah, I think he repeated the same pattern in Tel Aviv, playing many concerts within a very short period.
Yes.
Each concert, one Beethoven plus some other. What was your favorite performance of his concerto with orchestra?
Oh, that's almost impossible to answer. I mean, I loved most of them. I love the Beethoven Fourth Piano Concerto, which I think we're going to hear here in the competition too.
Yeah.
But I can't say that I really had a favorite. I remember I remember one Rachmaninoff in the Alhambra in Spain, but that was
in
memorable.
Alhambra.
Yes, but it was memorable because it was such a beautiful place. I'd never been there before, but most of them were memorable. Sometimes because because he was nervous and I was even more nervous. They were memorable too, but we won't talk about that.
Yeah, you mentioned the Rubinstein competition, and we should now remind our loyal viewers, television viewers, that this is filmed during the Rubinstein competition, and you came as #1 guest of honor.
It's such a pleasure to be here.
But I can imagine that always when you compare performances with what you remember, that's...
Well, over all these years, my father has not been here for a long time. I really find that I'm quite open-minded to different interpretations, but sometimes I do wish, I miss certain things that he just did very naturally. But, most of the competitors are quite young, and I give them a little leeway to grow and to mature. When you're young, I wasn't there when my father was very young, and he played fast, he played... he was different then, but they're young.
Yeah, it's amazing because most of his popular clips today are taken above the age of 80.
Really?
I think.
There are
70.
some older ones, but I mean, the fact is he grew up with the whole, gramophone industry.
Yeah. No, I'm not talking about recordings.
Oh, you're talking about the clips. Yeah, well, of course.
There
Same
are clips
thing.
of Toscanini, and then we see Toscanini conducting like this, and we are thinking, oh, this is Toscanini, this is what we heard, but he was so old when
Yes.
this was taken, and we forget that because he doesn't look old.
Right, that's true.
We would like to watch now another clip. You said natural language, and your father is talking about a natural language.
I played very often the most divine sonata of Beethoven with all my heart. I had a great success with it. I played then something grandiose of Schumann, whom I do adore, It all sounded very well, the public was very satisfied, but then suddenly one piece of Chopin, and the perfume comes out of the piano. You know, you are suddenly in a magic garden. Something happens to it, I don't know what it is. On the worst piano, it does sound always. He saves even bad pianos.
Alina, there is so much to talk and to tell about your father, but I would like you to tell me things that nobody else can tell. For instance, who were his close friends in Paris? Who came to visit your home in Paris?
His close friends were writers, a lot of writers, so of course other musicians, artists. His close friends, for instance, next door lived Marcel Pagnol, who was a wonderful French writer,
Sure.
and Marcel Achard, who was a playwright, that were very close friends. Vladimir Golshman, who was a Russian-born conductor and very close friends, and his wife Odette. Jacques Février, who was a well-known French pianist.
Oh, really?
And the writers and painters. Picasso was a friend, but he didn't come to visit in Paris.
And you knew all these great people?
I did, and I played the piano for Stravinsky. That was terrifying. Luckily, I didn't entirely realize who he was.
But finally, you have not become a pianist.
Yes, thank God.
You are a psychiatrist and psychoanalyst.
Yes.
A doctor.
I'm a
indeed.
doctor, yes. And I love my work. It's like reading many novels every day, serial novels that continue. And I like to work with starving artists, of course. I subsidize them with the not starving artists. But I play the piano, and I started the cello about 8 years ago, too, because I wanted to play in the music more.
Can I see your hand?
Yes.
So beautiful, reminding you
Very small.
your father. Yeah, smaller than your father.
Yes.
But the same kind of
The
cultivated.
same fingers, yeah, the same shape.
Cultivated. And the relationship between the fifth and the fourth?
My father had a fifth finger almost as long as the fourth. Mine is not. I wish it were, because I can reach 9 notes with difficulty.
And what is your favorite repertoire?
Well, in the last 9 or 10 years, I play mostly chamber music. I love Brahms, Beethoven, Prokofiev. I just played the cello sonata with a friend.
Why not Chopin? It's not in
No chamber music.
it's not in your DNA?
It is in my DNA, but you know, my father, Brahms was his first love and always love. He was always, of course, talked about as a Chopin player, but Brahms was his first? Biggest love, and Schubert.
I also remember that when Israel Philharmonic wanted to give him a present, he asked to conduct.
The
and
Brahms
asked to
Symphony.
conduct Brahms Symphony.
Yes. He loved Brahms because his mentor was Joseph Joachim, and he played for Joachim's violin lessons, and you know, he was such a friend. Joachim was a dear friend of Brahms, so Brahms was still alive when my father was born, so.
How the generation meets.
Yes,
This is
it's amazing.
Oral tradition with Brahms.
Yes.
Oral tradition with Brahms. But no oral tradition with Chopin.
Well, Chopin was Polish, and my father was a patriotic Pole as well as a Jew. He loved, you know, the Polish music, the rhythms, and you know, he loved Chopin, of course. But Brahms, too. I always want to plug Brahms because people always say Chopin, Chopin, but...
Tell me, Alina, do you speak Polish?
I understand, you know, dzieci spać, masz pieniądze, and I do understand, and I can speak pidgin Polish when I have to.
I assume that, like in my case, when the parents don't want you to understand.
That's right. Dzieci
and
spać.
then we try hard to understand.
And we learn those things immediately.
Yeah, we would like now to watch another clip of your father talking Spanish.
La melodía es muy graciosa, ¿sabes? Que eso se siente siempre en el canto de cada país. El francés, como es muy hablador, no se puede pararlo, ¿verdad? Cuando empieza a hablar, o sea, y tan deprisa, pues su melodía no tiene ritmo. O sea, ha visto que cuando las canciones populares así franceses nunca tienen un ritmo decidido, ¿verdad? Siempre está... Los ingleses tienen... Es un ritmo decidido porque la lengua les invita a hacerlo, hablan así. Los rusos lo mismo y un poco más ponderoso, ¿eh? Los españoles, vamos, están, como diría, flamenquizados un poco, ¿sabes? Todo eso tiene un poco del flamenco, ¿eh?
Alina, how many languages he spoke?
He spoke 7.
Fluently?
Pretty fluently. Most of them very fluently, and, you know, some a little less, but 7.
What a cosmopolitan life.
He had a good ear for language.
Yes. Yes. So the languages were Polish, Russian,
Yes,
English, Italian, French, Spanish.
German.
Oh, yeah, of course, of course.
How many is that?
Yeah, is more than enough, more than enough. He studied in Germany.
He studied music in Germany, and he had a tutor who taught him history, probably not math, but he was good in math, history and, you know, so on, so in German. So that was really a very strong language for him.
You mentioned before that in your profession as psychoanalyst, psychiatrist, you are helping the poor musicians.
I enjoy working with them, yes. I can understand their difficulties, I think.
But your life experience is with a very successful person, so I assume that the problems of the successful people and the unsuccessful are different.
But I was also, you know, I had some musical talent myself, and at one point my father wanted me to play a concert in New York, and it was very stressful for me, and I have performance anxiety, so I can really appreciate some of the difficulties that young people have.
And you identify yourself with...
With them, not with my father.
What did you play in this concert?
I didn't play because I was too afraid to play. You know, I was the daughter of a famous pianist, and I was a woman in those days, you know, in the early 60s, not so many women pianists, you know. I didn't want to be categorized, so I said no way.
Must not be so easy to be the daughter of Rubinstein.
No, not so easy, exactly. It's only as an adult. I mean, I always played, but only really as an adult do I play for great pleasure and joy. I play with my friends who are, you know, musicians also, and I don't want to have to make a living. I just want to play for love.
When I introduced you in the beginning of our show, I said, yeah, it's your first visit here, but you look so familiar.
It's not my first visit to Israel.
No, in the studio.
Oh, in the studio.
In the studio.
Yes.
In Israel, I know.
No, not.
Yeah. We are old friends. But in the studio, first visit, and yet you look so familiar.
Well, then why is that?
People look at you and say, oh, you are familiar, you look like Rubinstein?
Well, if they know that my name is Rubinstein, yes, they say, oh, you look like your father. My sister looks even more like my father, and so do my brothers. I think my father had very strong genes. My mother was a beautiful woman, but unfortunately we mostly look like my father.
I remember I met your sister in Warsaw, during the Chopin competition, and we were sitting together, and I look at her. We never knew each other, we never met before, and I look and I say, oh my God, here is Arthur Rubinstein. But now I look at you and I say, the same, oh my God.
So the older I get, I maybe...
We would like to watch another clip of Rubinstein playing Liebestraum.
Oh.
And I thought that Rubinstein was the pianist's pianist, but he was also the people pianist. He played not only for the snobs, he played for everybody.
But don't forget, music goes in and out of fashion. You know, when he was young, people played Liebestraum a lot. Now they don't, but back then it was more common to play it.
He played everything so well. It's so rare. Spanish music, Baroque music, classical.
Baroque, not so much.
Yeah, Bach Busoni.
Well, that's
okay,
not
but
exactly Baroque.
and romantic and Russian romanticism as well as Viennese. And we would like to listen to the last clip, which is Schubert. Schubert by Rubinstein, so pure, so simple. I'm sure you played it, Alina.
I did, yes, of course. We all play that when we're young.
And then you watch it and you play it with your hands,
No.
which resembles so much your father's hand.
I love Schubert too, I have to admit.
Yeah, he's my
What's
favorite.
not to like?
Yeah. Do you play it the same way as he?
I probably play it rather the same way because, you know, I was influenced, of course. I heard him play it and I loved the way he played it. And also the G-flat. He always liked me to play it for him, the G-flat impromptu.
This is another question I must ask you next time you are visiting us. What did you play for him? What kind of lessons he gave you at home?
He gave us no lessons because he was, as you said, always on the road. We had piano teachers. My younger brother and I both played the piano. The older two children, they gave up quickly, but we stuck with it. We loved it. We played four hands very frequently. It was very good because then we didn't fight. And but he would come back from many months of touring and say, "Play this Beethoven sonata for me."
Yeah.
And it was terrifying because neither of us learned well to sight read well. We both had perfect pitch, so we faked it. So when he would say, "Oh, go back there," and I would say, "Oh my God."
Alina, you must promise me to come again to our studio because there are so many questions left and it's such a joy to be with you.
Well, I've enjoyed it myself.
Thank you very much.
It's wonderful to be here in Israel.
תודה רבה.